Thank you to the source of creation, pure being, pure consciousness, for being everything, for being this live webinar, for being consciousness in forms which heal, for being everybody's ancestors, for being the divine in all of us, for being our healing circle, and for blessing our webinar tonight with the ability to work efficiently and concisely, for the ability to move collectively in a way which supports everyone, aligned with Dharma, to heal everyone, to bless everyone, to bless our whole world. Thank you for my support team, for everybody who helped make this happen. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom, without whose presence in the universe there would be no flow of information and we would be lost. So thank you to them. All right, we'll begin. All right, everybody. So the usual format is, especially for the new people, hey, oh, hi from Bali. All right, hello from Bali. This is so much fun. Oh, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, your upper left-hand corner gives you access to asking questions, adjusting your audio, and other useful things like that. We are recording the session, so everyone will receive recordings afterward. Doesn't matter if you're only participating tonight or only participating tomorrow, you get both recordings for the weekend. Yeah, so here's the setup. I will do a brief recap of what is energy healing, particularly for the people who are experiencing a live webinar for the first time. And then I would also like to do kind of a little sort of a recap or a setup for tonight's topic, which is aligning with Dharma, just to kind of put everything in perspective there. And then we want to dive as quickly as possible into the healing work, because that's the fun stuff. And the whole idea of these webinars is we want to go back and forth on the steps of experience and understanding of energy healing in order to stabilize everybody's proficiency in that field. So that's the idea. All right. And we've got some technical stuff still going on, but that's okay. Forward on. What is energy healing? Energy healing is using consciousness to heal the body. And it's based off the premise that the physiology basically is consciousness. It's just really concentrated consciousness. And so the area that we're working from to promote a healing effect in the physiology is the area of awareness or attention, because that is the bit of consciousness. That's the part of consciousness over which we have the most fluid autonomy. Right? It's easy to focus attention. You barely have to think, oh, a lotus flower, and there it is. Your attention just goes on it, you know, the necklace, whatever. It's very, very easy attention's very fluid, and it moves with just the slightest intention, with the slightest prompting. It just goes where you want it. So that's the layer or area of consciousness. It's the easiest for us to manipulate. So we want to bank on our strengths here and use awareness or attention as the implement to promote changes in the field of consciousness, which is the self. And the premise here is that as we direct attention or awareness intelligently, particularly to the very abstract or deeper levels of the physiology, or the deeper levels of the field or ocean of consciousness, we find the seeds. We find the source of illnesses and everything else, the source of everything that's good. And so attention directs into those tender spots in the field of being. And as it does that, it brings the quality of awareness or consciousness in a pure form to that area. Almost always, If there's an imbalance somewhere in the body at a gross level, that indicates that there's a seed of that imbalance somewhere at a deep level, at an abstract level. So the premise here is we want to learn how to navigate that ocean of consciousness and get our awareness into just the right spot, the sweet spot, where the source of the imbalance begins, where the seed of the illness starts. And that's rarely actually on the symptom. It's not the symptom. There's always something deeper behind the symptoms. So part of the beauty or the art of energy healing is learning how to direct attention intelligently, how to get it into the right area in the right way in order to produce a desired effect. And ultimately, the effect we're almost always going for is increased expression of divinity, more and more value of that qualities that reflect in a pure way the source of creation. That's the aim. So we want source of creation expressed at the surface of life in the most complete and graceful and comfortable and beautiful, holistic way. So that's what energy healing is. The setup for today's talk is about Dharma. And it came to my awareness, I should go back a step. For a long time, I have put myself in the position of supporting people to learn how to heal themselves with consciousness, learn how to help themselves heal, learn how to harness the innate healing capacity of the physiology in order to directly affect the areas that are most desiring or needing that support. And what I noticed was that when I kept following the symptoms back to their seed, over and over again, I kept finding karma. So that was interesting. It was like a pattern, there's karma. Even if it's something that from the outside, like say a car accident or, something that you'd say, well, that wasn't my fault, but even circumstances and situations often come back, or situations where a person's very innocent and they somehow got influenced by someone who wasn't innocent like that. Even those situations, there's karma. So that was one thing. And I've been noticing that maybe 10 years or 7 or 8 years or something. I was noticing the karma and lots of ways of dissolving karma. Then my work took me into an area of wanting to get a deeper, more clearer look at the very, very delicate, most delicate levels of consciousness, because that's where the really juicy work takes place, right? You've got the symptoms up at the surface, but more often than not, the solutions, the healing comes from all that resource that's in the field of pure being coming up and being applied, being activated and engaged from a very sort of deep and sophisticated level of consciousness, a level of consciousness where each of us has a deep, innate understanding of the nature of our universe. You could say we have direct experience of the laws of nature. There's a level of all of us. And I'm calling it the causal level there, because this is on one of the navigational tools of energy healing. How do you get your attention in the right place? You can traverse the field of self from more dense to more subtle. So at the very subtle levels, subtle but yet still manifest levels, we have a lot of sort of very great capability. There is a natural tendency to be more connected into the rest of creation at the deeper levels. So, source of creation, source of all energy, intelligence, creativity, all resource. And then the area, just the finest level of manifestation where all those resources are harnessed and implemented for the sake of healing. So I'm doing some exploration in that area. And what I found was that area, which I call the causal body, is held in common by everyone, but each one of us, like having our own homes, our own unique homes where we live, we tend to divide up that level of our being in different ways. Some people like a little cozy nooks and crannies in their home, and some people like a more open floor plan and so forth. So we tend to take that big field of finest expression of being and split it up in different ways. And when we do that, we get different types of vibrations coming from that, or resonations, fine impulses of intelligence or of consciousness coming from that deep level of self. Okay. So the walls at that level are made of karma. In many cases, in any case, I'm looking at people's situation, I'm following their symptoms back to the source, and I'm finding they've got some structure in the causal level of self that's humming and vibrating with a frequency that's not harmonious with their life goal, with their plan, with their soul's intention for this life. So you get this lack of harmony going on. It creates tension too. Think of like music, right? If you have a chord that's got a whole bunch of notes all clustered together, it kind of creates a non-harmonious feel. There's a kind of tension in a chord like that wants to be released. So karma was behind the symptoms, and then karma was also forming the boundaries or limitations, self-created at the fine level of feeling, access through the heart, right? Because that's where we access the finest level of our feeling. And there, giving rise to forms that weren't 100% ideal, that weren't perfect. It became evident that the solution to karma is Dharma, and that some of the walls, some of the boundaries in the causal level of the physiology are also comprised of Dharma. That when we've formed the life blueprint, you could say, and the body blueprint from structures of Dharma, then the spaces resonate harmoniously with each other. And the synergistic relationship between this room and that room over there and that room over there, they work together harmoniously like a machine that's like well-designed machine or something. And all the parts support each other. And over the course of time, we are creating foundations that are well placed, that support our alignment even as the larger environment evolves and changes around us. And we find out, oh, look at that. There was some like change in the economy, but oh, I just happened to amazingly have made that particular investment that worked with that change in the economy, like that. Okay, so the premise of Dharma then is the formation. I'm looking into everyone's causal bodies. Awareness penetrating the causal realm of creation. This is where we start getting into the healing part, because awareness starts to activate. It opens up, it awakens the intelligence at that level of the being. So here's an interesting thing. It just came up today about Dharma. For me anyway, it just came. Maybe some of you guys have already been thinking about this. One, thank you. It looks like there's a question. By the way, I'll take some questions more toward the end of the talk, just so that we flow, right? Dharma allows consciousness to move within and through the walls that it creates. So karma blocks flow. So when you have in the causal body karma, it creates like stuck energy. Whereas if there's a wall made of Dharma, it's more holistic in nature, which means it is a better reflection of pure being, which means it integrates nicely with the laws of our universe. And that includes, for example, the law of time. And I just gave an example of that, of like making a good investment, right? Because if that investment was dharmic, then sure enough, as the market changes, it turns out to be a beneficial investment like that. So it allows for flow. So it's like Dharma is like a boundary that doesn't hold you so tight that you're stuck, right? It's a boundary that supports evolutionary transformation. Okay. That wasn't actually what I was going to say about Dharma, but it was one of the realizations of the week. So it's like a pleasure to get to share that with you. Let's go back and do some healings. I've been talking already quite a few minutes. It's time to do some healings. So I'm looking into our group, and everybody should know that from multiple times of our meetings, we've learned to position ourselves all within equal distance of the energetic center of the webinar collective. So wherever you are, Bali, Vancouver, BC, Arizona, different places, all equal distance. And that means that the light of pure being, very innocent, very simple, the source of creation, sits at the center as the cosmic administrator. And I definitely want to talk about cosmic administrator tonight, because cosmic administrator is a very intimate, has a very intimate connection to Dharma. So, and in fact, that's the energy that I'm seeing at the center of the circle, is that resonation of the cosmic administrator. In Hinduism or Vedic knowledge, Vedic science, and we know there are many people here who are more expert than I am on Vedic science. Thank you to those of you who bring your expertise to this group. It's so appreciated. Vishnu is the balancer. Vishnu is the maintainer of the universe. So there are constructive laws of nature and destructive laws of nature, and then there's that which maintains the balance. And so that which maintains the balance becomes a symbol for Dharma, essentially. You can see how that allows a flow, right? Because it lets the destructive laws of nature do what they do, which is necessary in order to promote transformation, healthy transformation, and allows the constructive laws of nature to do what they do. This is so important. It's so important. The ability to embrace, and this is the download that's coming in for everyone, is that ability to embrace the whole range of constructive and destructive laws of nature and be okay with that. To be able to feel, for a lot of people, there's a whole skill set of capabilities, of particularly discrimination, required for dealing with the destructive laws of nature. And the ancestors are receiving a healing in this process too, because there tends to be patterns in the ancestors of resisting the destructive laws of nature, or like thinking about them as negative or undesirable, or somehow reflective. The fact that we're dealing with problems or, destructive situations indicates somehow there's something wrong with me. Like maybe if I were a better person, or if I were smarter, or if I'd somehow luckier or anything, I wouldn't have been caught in a war zone or whatever. Destructive and constructive laws of nature. We need to master all of them. All of them. So there's a whole skill set there. So the skill set comes with incredibly delicate discrimination. So this is being received as a download, particularly by the ancestors. I'm seeing for everybody in this group at least 8 layers of ancestors, 8 generations, going back, receiving this download of how to cultivate and apply a very fine levels of discrimination. And this means rewiring for the prefrontal cortex. It also means some reconstructive habits, reconstructing habits of behavior, clearing of impressions, also pain bodies. I could start doing a laundry list of everything that's clearing for people from, I'd say, the etheric body. Well, since it's 8 layers, we're actually all the way from physical all the way down to causal level. There's a lot of beliefs, pain bodies, attachments, and more. And things that I've talked a lot about in the past, so I'm not going to be too redundant because we have so much wonderful material to cover today. And all the webinars do go up online live, after 6 months. So all this material will at some point be fully online. And of course, for those of you who are with me, you get it now. So yay. All right. So as the ancestors are getting this clearing, and this clearing for everybody in the group, clearing all the way from the physical, all the way to the causal level of the physiology, that karma, which stands in the way of evolving the skill set required to masterfully handle both sides of the equation, both the constructive and destructive laws of nature, which is one of the main things that sets Dharma apart from karma. Because Dharma has a sort of more holistic, all-embracing value to it. So I have a story for everybody. I was just thinking this morning about that. And again, our Vedic science people will be more familiar with this. You may know even more details than I do, but it's such a great story. And the thing about mythic tales is that they are humanity's way of processing very abstract and deep lessons about the nature of reality over the course of centuries. Some of the types of challenges and lessons that humanity faces are they're so complicated and they're so abstract that in a single lifetime, even sometimes in multiple generations of people, we don't fully work the detail of it out. But as a people, as a family, as a world family, we've pretty much worked everything out over the course of all these centuries. And the answers come to us symbolically through mythic tales. So, this is the tale, it's one of my favorite parts of the Ramayana. It's the tale of Sita's Swayamvara. And a Swayamvara is like a special party for a young lady when it's time for her family to decide who she's going to marry. That's the way it was done back in India. And so, she does decide. But there's a test. The thing is, Sita's father was a king, King Janaka, and he had in his possession something very special. He owned or was in possession of the bow of Shiva. You can imagine Shiva being a god, that was like a big bow. And it was a thing. And he decided that on a particular auspicious day, that any man who could come, anybody who could lift that bow and bend that bow and string the string on that bow would be sufficiently brilliant enough that his daughter would, could consider him. So it just happened by happen chance that even though this word went out across the land and all kinds of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, well, not hundreds of thousands, but probably hundreds at least, everything from demons to kings and princes to Brahmins to all kinds of great people came. Ram happened to be passing through the city at that time on a trek that he was making. Just happened. And just happened by the suggestion of the rishi or the the wise man he was traveling with to maybe just go ahead and see what was going on at the Swayamvara. So he went over there, and as you can imagine, the story is a classic story. Everyone went up and tried to bend the bow, and not only could they not bend it, they couldn't even move it. I mean, it was big. They couldn't even budge it an inch. But of course, Ram walks up and he picks up the bow like nothing, and he bends the bow. He bends it so far he breaks it. Sita's very impressed. She's like, I want that guy. So that took care of that. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Ram is an incarnation of Vishnu, the manifestation of Dharma. Vishnu has another manifestation called Parashuram. And Parashuram's, one of his jobs was to protect the bow of Shiva, make sure nobody breaks it. So of course the sound of the breaking bow like travels across the whole universe. And of course Parashuram, in some deep state of meditation, suddenly realizes that the bow that he was trying to protect has just been broken by someone. And so in a fit of anger, Parashuram being a little bit famous for having fits of anger anyway, he strings his own bow and arrow and he goes racing into that Swayamvara to get the guy who broke the bow. But of course, something so interesting happens at that spot, right? Because what we've got is we've got one being, and we all, when I talk about the causal level of creation, that's a level of being that we all share. When we talk about being, the source of creation, we all share. So here what we've got is a setup. We've got being, and it's manifesting on one side to break the bow of Shiva, and it's manifesting on the other side to protect the bow of Shiva. And the two are not in harmony with each other. So it's an interesting moment. So a couple of things happen that really illustrate beautifully the mechanics of what we do in order to establish Dharma. First of all, Ram knows he's Vishnu incarnate. Parashuram also knows that, but when they look at each other, they see divinity. So Parashuram's standing there with his bow and arrow drawn, and he's looking at his own divinity, and he's like, oh, I can't really shoot myself. I can't shoot Vishnu, that would be wrong. But once the bow has been strung, you have to use it. And the thing about anger is it's going to cut. No matter what you do, it's going to have a cutting effect. It just is. So he says to Ram, he kind of bows down to Ram, Parashuram bows to Ram and says, what should I do with my arrow? It's like strung and I definitely don't want to shoot you with it. And so Ram says, let's shoot it into small ego, which is in the east. Just shoot it to the east. And it will eliminate small ego. It's a very interesting point because what it means is that there's an element of small ego that's responsible for the anger expressing itself in an indiscriminately destructive manner. And when that piece of ego is eliminated, it allows for the discrimination, and that's the whole act of shooting the arrow toward a specific spot which resides at a fine level of creation, right? Because the ego isn't even physical, right? So it's like he's directing the arrow to a fine level of self in order to take it out pluck it, like the surgeon's knife. And we talked about that last time, the difference between hot and cold anger, which I've been really, really enjoying working with over the last couple of weeks since the concept came up. So the difference between hot and cold anger also ties in to the difference between addressing situations from a dharmic position versus addressing from an adharmic or karmic position. Oh, there's one more little juicy aside to that story, and that is, this would be the night before Ram marries Sita, basically, right? Because that's the Swayamvara, and she chooses him, and the next thing that happens in the story is they get married. And it's interesting that it's Ram himself goes through a transformation at that moment with that arrow from Parashuram, taking out that piece of ego that would possibly cause friction between himself and Sita, right? Because if he's coming into any kind of situation in the relationship with that kind of fiery, destructive anger, it wouldn't be good for the marriage. So it's kind of interesting that it happens right at that, because that kind of event could have happened anywhere in the Ramayana, but it happened right there. And it shows that even Ram, even the God, has to go through the manifestation of God, has to go through an evolutionary transformation as part of his process of stepping with grace into his next position like that. So I'm holding silence just for a moment because I want to come back to the healing. Checking in with the ancestors. I think everything is looking very good there. It's looking beautifully transformed. Seeing the light of being, the grace of God, moving through these layers of the ancestral physiologies, at least 8 layers for everybody. Etheric, through causal. Brings up a little point from a download I was getting just minutes before this healing began, is I realized that when life is able to move progressively forward with grace, there's a very distinctive energy form present. It's like having the blessings of the divine all the time. And so our healing circle is receiving this structure. The structure seems to be connected to or associated with the causal body as spaces. And that's something, if anybody wants to explore on YouTube, I've got a video on causal body and how, as humans, we approach it or look at it from 3 different angles. You can look at it as spaces, you can look at it as vibrations, or you can look at it as humming spaces, which are basically beings, right? So the mythic tales shine a light of awareness on the causal level of self as beings. We identify with the hero. But now we're looking as a space. And I'm seeing it both slightly as a space and also in the junction between a space and a vibration, in a junction between a space and a vibration. And that quality of the cosmic administrator, Ram, the cosmic administrator, is the essence of that energy, Dharma incarnate. And as that's happening, another thing that's going on, that's sort of starting to add into this, the mix of this healing, is the fact that our collective, by looking all of us together into this Dharma, into the cosmic administrator, is starting to wake up a level of creative intelligence from the deepest level of creation sufficient to promote healing directly for Dharma. It's a little bit like shooting the arrow, Parashuram, shooting his arrow into a subtle level of creation and using it to actually heal something rather than destroy something. Or in the destruction process, it also purifies. So I'm looking at that. The overseeing organization of it is coming from pure being in that luscious gap between silence folded in on its own nature and silence awake to its own nature. Right there in that spot. The value of transformation is so great. It's so irresistible. And it is so absolutely perfectly aligned, perfect expression of cosmic intention. It's It's mothers at home to the extreme degree that literally whatever the child does is just fine. It's just perfect. He comes in covered in mud, good. Draw the bath. He falls down and hurts himself. Come here. I love you. I'll blow on it. Just, just is something, there's a level of perfection there. It's like no matter what, it transcends all the imbalances and imperfections of creation. So this sort of luscious space, that's where the rocking of the cradle of Krishna is in that space between I'm just in the silence and I'm like going to come out and do something, and I'm just in the silence. I'm going to come out and do right there. And so it's becoming very, very lively. And one of the things I'm seeing happening for us as individuals as that happens is a very nice, very, I would say, graceful and sort of tender, very appropriate and delicate activation of the creative intelligence in the deeper chakras of the physiology. Earth chakras, root chakra, second chakra, third chakra, these areas. We've done a lot of work with the heart and mind in previous webinars, and that's all good stuff. But expressions of creative intelligence through the deeper, more earthy, more associated with our humanity, right? Because our minds are associated with our dreams and our thoughts and our creative work, and our hearts are associated with our service to the collective and so forth. But the basti area, the gut area, and the reproductive organs and all that is more like we're connections to the earth, and we're connections to the manifest, feet on the ground, stable, manifest level of creation, to our earth, to our physical environment and our physical world. Good. This is important because this healing that's being promoted by our collective right now is directing toward, in a very pragmatic way, a healing for the administrative structures of creation as they reside at a universal level. So Dharma, as it resides in the whole universe. Dharma. The whole universe is going through the different epochs of time, right? Kali Yuga isn't just on Earth. Kali Yuga is in the whole universe. And in Kali Yuga, 3 of the legs of the bull of Dharma are broken. So the bull of Dharma also requires support. I'm seeing this really, really, really interesting interface going on between the quality that we would call Vishnu and the quality that we would call Shiva, because Shiva rides the bull, right? So that's very abstract. And all I can say is it reflects the deliciousness that's in that gap between the silence in its essential state and the silence awakened and ready to pounce. In there, that relationship between those two forms is incredibly rich. And it is enjoying its reality right now. So these two values, as they are self-interacting values of the one being of creation, are awakening in our physiologies as a unique means by which we divide up our causal bodies. Vishnu, Shiva. So thank you to Vedic science for making names for them, because I know a lot of people watch these videos on YouTube and they know nothing of Vedic science. And so bless you, anybody who's bearing with us through all of this, but it's okay if we give them names, if we name them by their Vedic names. But the important point is that the causal body is taking on like a kind of a classic form. Everyone's getting a chance to have the opportunity or option, if you wish, to adopt the classic form, or at least to have it in your archive as a backup as necessary. Because at any time, the causal body, because it's so abstract, can be very fluid and very flexible. It can take on lots and lots of different forms. And usually when we're healing something specific on the surface of the physiology, the causal body has to get in like that arrow from Parashuram. It has to get in and be very specified in order to specifically address, like say, adrenal fatigue. Say we have somebody here with adrenal fatigue. Well, then to get in and actually address the adrenal glands and the entire endocrine system, which is also tied in, the pituitary adrenal axis, doing that healing for everyone. As that happens, the causal body is required to shape itself up, to form itself up into very specified form that's designed specifically to address the adrenal glands, is designed specifically to be able to move without effort through the adrenal pituitary axis. And that form, particularly in the female physiologies out here, is seeped in compassion. It's seeped in compassion. Oh, guess what? Compassion's one of the 4 legs of the bull of Dharma. So what that means is we as a collective promote a healing effect for the larger universal Devic structure of Dharma. And as such, it's able to reflect back into our physiologies in an improved condition that supports hundreds of thousands, at least hundreds of thousands. I can count. Let's count, shall we? 100, 100,000, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 500,000, giving or taking several tens of thousands, something like that. About 500,000 women are receiving a healing. Sorry, guys. guys get their healings too, because we're talking endocrine system here. So the men have their particular endocrine considerations, which are also being addressed. Compassion and acceptance. And I'm just reading, these are energy frequencies which are radiating from the causal level of physiology, activated by our awareness that's been bouncing down there at the causal level all this time. And I'm just reading them as they surface. Acceptance and compassion. And then there's kind of like, because it's Dharma, there's also a flip side. And the flip side is having the strength and the clarity and decisiveness to set healthy boundaries. People, relationships, work situations, even with oneself, And right now, this healing is moving out into the area where people have, remember the conflict, Vishnu, the part that protects the bow, the part that breaks the bow, and they come head to head, right? So they're in disagreement. So we've got situations for some people that are being addressed by this healing of having established behaviors and habits and patterns, and behind that beliefs and thought forms, which give rise to actions which are not always necessarily fully life-supporting and fully helping the physiology be aligned with its Dharma, which is to support the ability to carry pure divine being, expressing that all the way to the surface. That's the sort of like, that's the Dharma of the physiology, is to be able to carry divinity, to be able to be the vessel or the vehicle for divine being. And so what happens is sometimes there's this conflict of interests where the individual slides into those behaviors and those actions and even desires that are somehow not allowing, they're creating boundaries for the physiology that are kind of stuck and creating stuck energy in the physiology. And so I'm seeing that stuckedness, which originates down at the causal level as karma, all the way up into the physical tissues of the body. For a lot of people, those stuck energies are picked up by the microbiome. And then the microbiome, which is kind of like your body's collective in a way, it's like this lovely collective sitting in the body, it starts to take those behaviors which are not so life-supporting as kind of like the average, as like, that's just like my common, that's the way I am, that's the way I function. And behind that, there's some kind of energy that's really malefic. So I'm just feeling that. I went to a restaurant today and I was sitting at a table, and about 2 tables in front of me where I could see eating was a young man. And he ate so fast, so much food, that his little cheeks, he was like, what, 25 or 30 or something? And he probably choked on his food like 5 or 6 times during the meal. I was like, do I need to run over and do the Heimlich maneuver? No, he's okay. And then that happened again and again. It was really, and I realized, I looked at this young man and I thought to myself, that's how he always eats. That's his normal. That's his normal. And doesn't seem, and his dad, who's sitting with him, doesn't think there's anything wrong with that. His dad's like, no, that's how my son eats. I'm looking for the seed of the deeper imbalances. And again, we're back with the ancestors, because the ancestors collectively justified behaviors that were not supportive. Alcohol. Like alcohol was like, everybody drank alcohol. If you go back to the Middle Ages, alcohol was rationed out as like part of daily rations for literally everyone in Europe. And one wonders why they called it the Dark Ages. There was very little progress that took place at that time. I mean, even the monks, even the people who were responsible for upholding the spiritual values of the time, did not drink water. They drank beer because it was cleaner. It was distilled. I feel as if we are chasing down a string of consciousness which runs not just on our earth, but it runs through the creation. And it's that lovely mothers at home feeling that's behind this chase, because there's a safety, there's a confidence that comes with chasing down the bigger imbalances and then facing one's greatest fear. In a way, it's like a fear. Maybe not the greatest fear, but facing it down. This is a healing for those Davic structures. So it's A, at a very abstract level. Is B, in an area I've never spoken on before. In fact, C, I've never even seen before. So, beautiful. Thank you, Ogden. Greatest fear is loss of the small self. Yeah, it's that little ego. Right, for us as individuals, because it's the small self makes us feel like we're in control of the situation. And part of what's happening right now is I'm just, you guys, our collective is extremely powerful. And we structure things as a collective that I don't know what the heck it is, but I'm the mouth. And so I am going to continue talking, even though, even though it's new territory for me. And what it means for me also, so I also experience that I'm like completely out of my small comfort zone. But I can see this thing clear as a bell. I can see it. It's this thread of consciousness, which leads to a place of unknown, which is, we are being asked as our healing collective to go into that space because there's something important in there for us. There's something important to do. There's something important to know. There's something important to experience. And it is directly related to creating balance, dharmic action at a universal level to create an evolutionary transformation which affects not just us as an individual healing collective and not just our earth, but it's at a larger Davic level of the universe. So innocently, I go in and I read. And as I do this, awareness is dipping like this. I love telling you guys what's happening inside my awareness when I do this. Awareness is dipping like this into the field of being, into the field of being, into this, it's like bouncing. It's like rolling like that into the field of being, back and back and back and back and back and back and back. So the silence is deep, deep silence. And there's a feeling of that. It's like also in like deep, deep space. There's that deep vastness. It's a little bit like diving into deep waters. And the first thing that comes up through our healing collective is an impulse through the heart area. And it is an impulse of deep discrimination. And there's also an element of, the first element was a kind of element of loving compassion also. Oh, okay, so download coming in. Okay, so sorry. Sometimes the information comes too fast. My mouth can't say it, but now I spit it. I spit it out all out for you. So we are on the verge of a time of much faster, much greater transformation than what we have experienced thus far. And so the skill sets required by us and by anybody who cares and is willing enough to accept the challenge is these skill sets are going to require the ability to move with as much comfort into unknown territory as we move through known territory. And in order to do that, a level of balance, which is much finer than anything we've worked with thus far, is required. So that's the first thing that's happening for everybody in the Healing Collective, is the establishment of a level of balance that's just, it's as if the balance itself is seeped in silence. It's no longer a balance of complementary pairs of opposites, as you have heard me talk about for ages now, or months at least, months and years. It is a balance that goes beyond complementary pairs. It is the very essence of balance. It is pure balance. It is balance in the silence of being. It is a balance that is outside of time and space. So I see this value of balance sort of embracing all complementary pairs of opposites that ever were or ever will be. It is stabilizing in the court of light for everybody in this healing collective. So right in the very core of the being in that silent space that's in the tube of light that is the energy field of the self. The balance is there. Okay, and the balance is like the master of all forms. So this balance provides a foundation to bring forth any kind of structure or boundary at the causal level, at any level, but it's before the boundaries form. So the balance is there, and I'm just asking being, because I'm kind of exploring, as this is happening, I'm also learning it and exploring it with you. So I'm asking being, what is the most effective way to integrate the balance? Is there more integration other than its stabilization, the cord of light? Okay, so what's happening is in the cord of light, that balance is finding its anchoring at the finest level of feeling in the heart. As it does so, it's creating a evolutionary transformation for the cord of light, for the naga, which is the life source for the physiology. So this is a more eternal life form of self. It's part of our self, is this cord that runs through the body's ancient being cord, older than the physical form. Obviously, the creator of the physical form is also receiving as a healing, is receiving this download. So that's part of it. So the balance is also for the nagas, and as that happens, because we are a collective, it's kind of like an army where everybody in the army steps in the same step. Everyone in the army steps together. The level of softness and delicacy in the heart right now is amazing to me. And the delicacy is so extreme that it has opened up the entire heart area of the physiology to purest wisdom. And what I'm experiencing is there's no boundary at all to the level or degree of wisdom that's capable of being received right now by the physiology. So that is like a key. It's like free access to all wisdom. I'm also feeling that sort of very luscious energy that sits deep, deep in the field of being, between being asleep and being awake, is starting to sort of issue through the cord of light of everybody's center of everyone's physiology. So this is an expansion of the expression of this extremely luscious, life-giving, it's like the energy, pure energy of creation. And it's the lower chakras that we were looking at earlier, the earth chakras and the 1, 2, 3 chakras, are looking very clear right now and very open. That's good. That's good. So this is kind of like pure creative energy. I'm seeing the healing both from my individual physiology and reporting what's happening in people's individual physiologies at the same time. There's like this whole other scenario going on at a universal level with the nagas and with the Devic forms of creation. So what's going on there is organization, structuring, orderliness. Thank you. Think about the bull of Dharma's legs getting broken, and the bull of Dharma being like a universal form. And when the fractures start to knit back together, order is restructured. So that's what's happening. We're seeing order restructured. It's so interesting. This energy that's in us, that's awakening in us, in our physiologies and integrating into our beings. It's creating balance in the endocrine system, and it's supporting very, very healthy digestion, and it's reawakening energy flows in the body that are even from, you know, earlier in the physiology, all the creative energies, creative juices of the body waking up. It's bringing luster back to the skin, all kinds of good things for our physiology. At the same time, the leg of Dharma, which is being healed, is the leg of austerity. So we're having access and the upgrade in our ability to use really intense creative energies and to revel in a richer level of life experience, but at the same time, the complementary opposite, which is the discrimination required to address every experience without that small ego, basically. Because what gives rise to people exploiting karma, you know, like sensory experience, like you've got austerity on one side and then you've got overload of sensory experience on the other side, right? That what causes people to exploit that or to not use it in alignment with Dharma is small ego. Oh, I just want more. Give me more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So it's knitting together. And as the leg, as these shards, they look like little pieces of cosmic structure, which are at a fine level of creation. Oh, primarily at the astral level of creation, astral, and then into that very fine level of the astral field, which is that area of the mist that we talked about last time, which is also an area I've been doing extra exploring in, and I'm not bringing out a lot of that tonight, but I do look forward to doing so in future webinars, because that's where tremendous amount of autonomy and power over the cities, for example, the ability to manifest anything in Ritam and various. There's some good material there. But anyway, this knitting together of these fine structures, when the shards of the leg break, karma sits around the edges of the shards of the leg, right, of the bone. So the karma is dissolving, it's being replaced by Dharma. Dharma is being expressed as the actions of universal devas who are actually responsible for knitting the tissues back together. And this is the same way that busted tissues in the physiology are healed, are knit back together. Broken bones. There's Devic structures in the physiology that are responsible for knitting the bone back together, for creating these lovely materials, light medicines and different materials that go in and start to glue everything back together. And what's happening there is the action of the Devic intelligence is literally, you could say, a slap in the face of karma. I mean, the level of devotion and dharmic action and wisdom and discrimination and grace with which those Devic structures are pulling the tissues of austerity back together. This itself balances karma. It balances karma. And of course, on Earth, it makes austerity a tool that we can use to support manifestation of our highest potential. In Sat Yuga, in the early times, then you can use all the four legs of Dharma are accessible and useful, and they help. And in Kali Yuga, we have truth. And the others, it's like people are austere. I have people come to me a lot of times and they say, I'm doing everything right. You know, I mean, I've done everything. I have Lyme disease and I've tried everything. And I've gone to every doctor and I've tried every holistic medicine. I've tried everything. Literally nothing is working. they'll say, and so like that happens. Here's this person, and they're like engaged in, like, they're watching their diet, and they're going to bed on time, and they're doing the purifications, and they're doing their austerity. They're not just out there partying it up all over the place, and yet it wasn't working for them. So this is shifting the laws of nature at a universal level, and then also for Earth, and also for all of us. So this is our Dharma. This is our service that we're giving to our Earth, and to giving to the collective, and giving to the universe, as we're engaging our awareness in such a way as to open up a greater facility of this particular aspect of Dharma, so that everybody can use it. Anybody who can discipline themselves to act in a way which is not, what do we want to say, is not greedy or selfish or indulgent. Okay, indulgent's a good word. So anybody who's willing to not just be indulgent, but to sort of pace their action. Oh, that is kind. She says, yes, anybody who's kind, who's not just like trying to get it all for themselves, right, is able to pace the way they use the resources of their own physiology, of their environment, of their social resources, to pace with measured regularity, with some amount of austerity. Then what this does is it supports that individual receiving blessing from that in a way that hasn't happened up till now. At least not for, yes. Oh yeah. Hi, this is question time. We have just like 11 minutes now, you guys. Any questions? We've got a question here, we've got a question there. Let's go ahead and take the question from here. Hi.
It sounds dangerous to me, this shift, because there's a lot of indulgence in austerity currently, and how might this react?
Thank you. What a brilliant question. So the question is, well, he says it seems dangerous because people can also indulge in austerity, that's like a really good point. It's a really good point. So I'm just going to ask being. I'll be the mouth. What the healing is really doing is it's activating, it's healing Dharma as a whole. So the improvement in austere actions to produce a beneficial effect is increasing. But in doing so, it actually supports people's ability to do less and accomplish more. Because what it means is, instead of having to be so austere for just a little bit of reward, it's going to allow a better balance in the laws of nature, so that when austerity is practiced with very pure, like the pure intent, right, that the result is a clear, concise answer from nature, that you did this and this is the result. It's a little bit like cold anger, or that arrow, the surgeon's knife that goes in and it works concisely. That very specific, I do this austerity and then the benefit is like this. Whereas before, what you're referring to is when the leg of austerity is broken, people are using austerity a little bit like hot anger, where they're just like, just everything austere, as much austere as I possibly can, everywhere I possibly can, and just hope that something comes out okay, right? And now it's kind of, it's taking on a different form. It's like a more orderly, more intelligent form. And that was definitely one of the things I saw when we were doing this healing. At the more universal level of the healing was increased orderliness, which means a more responsive environment. And that's for everybody. It's going to make even measured regularity, even in the field of austerity, more rewarding and rewarded experience? Thank you for that question. Oh, thank you. Here's a question from up here. I have a question about Dharma that keeps super bugging me, so I thought I'd go ahead and send it now. Can your Dharma change? Oh, that's such a good question. Can your Dharma change? I'm asking being. It's a great question. It's a deep question. Yes and no. Okay. Well, that was an interesting answer. Okay, so the yes side is that what we consider Dharma from a human individual level is decisions that the soul makes as it's coming into this lifetime. So the soul will decide, I really, in this lifetime, I need to learn this big lesson. I was thinking of a really sweet man I was working with the other day, and his situation was that in a previous incarnation, he had a mother who kind of smothered him with love. Like she was too smothering, and he never really got a chance to grow up. He never really got a chance to come out and be himself. He never got a chance to take responsibility and be a grown-up, and because the mother was always doing everything. And it was like a trap situation. And in this lifetime, he was born to a completely dysfunctional mother who didn't love him at all, who couldn't love anybody, and was unfortunately unable to provide a platform for comfortable relationship for him, comfortable relationships, because he didn't know what it meant to be loved by a mother in this lifetime. And I realized when I was looking at that you could say that in this lifetime, the Dharma was to learn to manifest and support loving relationships with no support, zero support, completely self-sufficiently. First, the relationship with the self, and then the relationship with everybody else, and to do it in a way that's way harder than you or me or anybody else has to do it. Like a warrior, like a hero. He's out there doing it the hard way. So we choose these challenges, our life lessons. Those life lessons can be renegotiated. So this is the yes. They can be renegotiated. If I decide that I'm going to take on a life lesson that's like, I get in here and I realize it's too hard, right? Then I can renegotiate that life lesson, and I can decide it can be modified. I would say both karmas and dharmas can be greatly modified. So it's like Parashuram putting the arrow on his bow. Once the arrow's on the bow, it's going to have to shoot somewhere. But it's possible to organize oneself so that when it does shoot, it doesn't wreck anything important. In fact, it wrecks something that we needed to get rid of. Or in the same circumstance, one could make poor choices that could cause that arrow to go in and really wreck everything bad in a bad way. So both are possible. That level of decision-making and choice is what we own as individuals and what we harness in the energy healing process. We're working with that level of manipulation. But the no, you can't change Dharma, is that there are structures of Dharma which uphold our universe. You don't want to poke a hole in the universe, because that's bad when that happens. So there are certain things that are part of living in a human body and being in this universe that are just part of this. And really, we don't change them. We don't change them. We honor them because that's part of this reality. And we chose to be here as humans. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. So we can be happy with that. It's all right. All right, my dears. So we've come to our time already, even though I started a couple minutes late. We're just a couple minutes over, so we have our full value of tonight's session. Thank you for the good questions. I really appreciate that. And if you still aren't sure, you can always ask me again. Meanwhile, I just would like to honor and thank everybody who's here from all over the world, even in Europe, which I know that they're making a sacrifice. Yes?
Happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. It's our anniversary today, 28 years. So thank you. It's been a very fun adventure and very sweet. And we are enjoying using our relationship to support more and more people. Oh, thank you. More and more people. The chat box is filling up with happy anniversaries. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're using our strengths together because we complement each other to be able to provide the best possible service and the best means of perpetuating and sharing and supporting everybody's ability to get really comfortable with energy healing. My vision is for you to feel at home with it. Because as we do that, oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. They're just popping in really fast now. We love you guys. Thank you for everything. I look forward to seeing most of you again tomorrow. So we'll do it again tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Central, different in different time zones around the world, loving everybody dearly. Thank you so much for being with me. And thank you for like turning this into an anniversary celebration. Oh my God. Good night, everybody. See you soon. We love you. Bye.